Sorry. Yeah, can you ask him? Yeah, come over. Okay.
Yeah, and he can, no. Well, I thought I was going to be staying over here. Just in
Oh, yeah.
Testing. Oh, yeah, they can hear me.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mary, for bringing that attention to everybody. Welcome to the 2023 Meet the Candidates Night. I wanted to first thank everybody that stopped in to get to know our candidates. We have three board positions that are open. That's a big one this year, and all three we have new candidates. So getting to know your candidates, what they support, what they think is important is a very, very valid point of your education and being able to vote, you know, so it supports what you believe in. So first off, thank you for coming in. Thank you, board members, for volunteering your time to be a candidate for the board. And to get started, let's go ahead and do a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we did pass out notes that you guys can ask questions. If you didn't have a chance to fill those out, if you can grab them pretty quickly so that we can keep everything going, that would be great. We are going to start off. First of all, George is going to come up. He's our current president and speak to us just a little bit. After his opening comments, we will go ahead and start off with the questions, opening statements from each of the candidates. We will be asking questions that they can answer, and then we'll be doing closing statements. Our moderator for tonight is Mary Rick, or Mary Speak. And we're going to go ahead and get going. George, did you want to come up?
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming out. I'd like to also say thanks to these 5 people here. They're endeavoring to take on quite a responsibility, very time consuming, but very important for the community. I've been on the board 7 years, and believe me, 7 years is plenty. Thank you very much. But I don't think, James and I were just talking, I've never seen this many people come out and run for the board, so I think that's a great sign, and thank you for doing that. We've had years where we had to beg people and appoint people because people weren't willing to run. I thought I would just say a few words about what I think is important for a board member, and certainly it's not an exhaustive list because we don't have that much time. A couple of things that I think are extremely important. One of them is fair-minded. We don't get on the board so we can get done what we want to get done. Well, maybe those things come into view sometimes, but we're here to serve an entire community, not just ourselves or our friends or whatever. Another important part of that is sometimes you guys have probably been in meetings where there's 20 very irate people out there about some issue. Well, it's not a board member's job to please those 20 people. There are 2,000 people here that a board member has to please. So it's really important to always keep that in the back of your mind. I'm here to serve everybody, not just the people that yell the loudest. I think it's really important that a board member be business-minded because, let's face it, we're running a relatively large nonprofit organization here, and each board member is a fiduciary of that organization. And one of our primary goals here is to preserve and protect the value of this community, including each of our homes and the common areas here as well, because we're dealing with millions of dollars, so that's extremely important. Another important thing I think is board members need to be introspective. We need to be willing to look and say, okay, what can we do better as a board? What can I do better as a board member? And in being introspective, it probably takes into account sometimes saying, okay, we screwed that up. Now let's try to get it right. Because the best boards in the world are going to make mistakes. They have to recognize that, change course, and make things right. I think another really important point is just to be open and honest with people. I know we hear, and we try to do this, transparency. And of course, you can't share everything that goes on, because some things are confidential, but be as transparent as possible when you're in front of the community and communicate and let people know what's going on. So with that, we'll turn it over to Tracy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. So I do have one announcement. As you guys all know, you've been sent out with the e-blasts and the mailers, the newsletter, that we did have 6 candidates. Janice Martinelli has decided to withdraw her application. She will no longer be running for one of the board positions. She wanted to thank all of the people that supported her, and she also wanted to let you guys know she's going to remain very active. Feels that she can be better served by being a resident attending the meetings. With that said, I would encourage all of you, come to the meetings, come see what we're talking about. It keeps you informed, and it also gives you a voice. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and introduce to you your 2023 candidates. First we have Mike Foxworth. Thank you, Mike. Next we have Nancy Giblatera. Nancy. Next we have Dennis Walden. And next to Dennis is Linda Lee. And last but definitely not least, we have Paul Denny. So with that, I'm going to join Mary, and we're going to begin opening statements. Mary, go ahead.
Before we start, do I have anyone else, or did everyone turn in their questions? Yes.
I'll come around and have you raise your hand. Here's someone over here.
Here.
Thanks, guys.
As we pick those up, you all have 2 minutes for an opening statement and a closing statement. So 2 minutes each. And then you have 1.5 minutes to answer the questions. And I ask the question, every one of you guys will be able to answer that same question. All right. We're going to start with Mike Foxworth. You have 2 minutes for your opening statement.
Get this close, right? Can you hear me? Testing, testing. Technical difficulties. This is not counting on my 2 minutes. Let's go. Yeah.
Testing, oh. It works. Well, good evening. Thank you all for coming. 2011, Dee and I moved to Trilogy in the fall after retirement, after 40 years of a career in hospital development and communications. In our view, our career experience with hospitals is not that much different really from HOA management, in that both endeavors count significantly on the help of unpaid volunteers like us and like all of you. Dee and I first attended a TGMA board meeting in that first year, and some of those meetings that we attended were fireside chats. Any of you remember the fireside chat meetings that were held in Trilogy in the room next door, the fireside room? Well, those were valuable Q&A sessions. Unfortunately, they're no longer held, but many of us believe that those should return. HOA governance cannot always please everyone, as George was indicating. The nature of HOA governance with more than 1,300 dwellings and hundreds of pages of California code, I gotta make sure I don't get too close to this, California code and our own CCNRs governing policies and procedures. How is it possible for all of us to be on the same page all the time? HOA board members are charged with arriving at consensus. But the unanimous votes that come up once in a while indicate board alignment on those votes. Yet the 5 who are voting are not required to always agree on every issue.
and are free to have lively debates. So it brings me to consider in every matter, what is the Uber Alice? Uber, like the rideshare program, and Alice, which is German for what matters most. So,
Mike,
Yeah.
thank you for your opening statement, but the 2 minutes has passed.
I only have one more sentence.
Nancy, your opening statement.
My name is Nancy Gibaltera. I've lived here almost 20 years. In June it'll be 20. Can you hear me? No. That was purposeful. Anyway, I've lived here almost 20 years. I've been to many board meetings, and missed a lot too. And it's really important for people to go to board meetings so they can learn what's going on and find out for themselves what's being said. Because what happens here in Trilogy, it's kind of like the Canada string, that by the time you hear what really was the answer, it's diluted or it's changed or it's not the same. So if you can make yourself available on Tuesdays, I think they're at 3 o'clock now, that would be terrific. My belief is in the owners of Trilogy and the residents. If I can say anything, it's because I support whatever we can do to make things fair and equitable to the extent we can. I hold everyone accountable, myself probably the most, but I believe in working as a team player. I believe in being fair in how we deal with things. And sometimes you're not going to like the answers. I've said that in my bio, because I think, as George said, you can't please everyone. You have to look at the whole. And sometimes that's very hard. But if you have a quorum on the board, all you need is 3 people to say that this is how they want the vote to go. And whether you personally agree with it or not, you go with the board. And sometimes it's not easy. I also believe that if you have an issue, there are ways to deal with it. And if you bring it to me, I'm going to ask you, how would you resolve it? Because to me, that's important. Now, it may be way off the wall, and it may not be something we can even look at, but maybe we can consider. But I'm just truthful, honest, and what you see is what you get. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Dennis, your opening statement, sir.
So can you hear me now, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay. My name is Dennis Walden. Glad to be here tonight. Thanks for everybody coming. They only told me 10 people were going to be here, so this is a little bit different. So anyway, my wife Diane and I, we bought our home in Trilogy in 2014 because I was going to retire, but then we didn't. So we didn't actually live here until 2017. The company transferred me back here. I worked 2.5 more years, so I retired in 2020, and then COVID came, so that wasn't much fun to do after I retired. So anyway, in the questionnaire that they originally filled out, they wanted to know about goals and objectives that I had. So I kind of looked at them not really as goals, my goals, because the goals I think for this board are really come from everybody else, but areas of concern or importance, I picked 5. One was safety and security for the neighborhoods that we live in. The second one was to maintain a resort atmosphere, which I believe in, and I think we are living in one of those right now. To be fiscally prudent, I think, is very important. By that I mean everything that should be considered should have cost-benefit analysis, and then a very clear outline of the return on investment of that. So I think that the current board does that pretty well, and I think we should continue to do that, and maybe even greater detail. And then finally, let's see. Make certain that all residents, that's all of us, have a loud voice with the board and have avenues to sort of speak their mind. They have that now, and I think we should continue to encourage everybody to come and do that, as Nancy said as well. My career was in business. My degree was in business management from Bradley University in Troy, Illinois. And my master's in business was from Chapman University here in Southern California. Interestingly, I didn't go the typical way. I went to night school for all my college degree is, and I'm done.
Linda?
Hi, I'm Linda Lee. I've lived here since August of 2010. When I first moved to the community, I was still working, so I didn't have the opportunity to get involved. But as soon as I retired, then I started looking for ways to get involved in the community. I've had several different committees that I've been on, and I've been an ambassador for a number of years. My career, I've had a varied career. In the last 20 years, I worked as a program manager for multinational companies. And for those of you who don't know what a program manager does, they have a customer that they have to meet the contractual obligations to the customer, as well as meeting all of the guidelines that the company has. They have a budget that they're responsible for, and a lot of times they have to deliver bad news. So I've had a lot of experience telling people things that they really don't want to hear. And I know, coming to TGMA board meetings, George has had a lot of experience doing that as well. So hopefully, I wouldn't have to deliver bad news, but I do know how to do that. The things that I'm looking to do is, as Nancy said, I really believe that it needs to be equitable. If we do it for one, we have to do it for everyone. I also believe in communication, very, very strong communication. I know the board is working on that. I think there's still work to be done to improve ways for the community to get information, as opposed to going on my next door trilogy for information about what's going on. Hopefully, the board will work on that regardless of who the members are. So, thank you. Paul.
Hi, everybody. Is this an old piece of America or what? So I'm going to try to answer this in a way that I would want to know what I want to know about the candidates. So first off, my wife and I, Lori, moved here in November, so I'm the newbie here. I've been here very long. The reason that I think sitting on the board is so important is multifaceted, obviously, but two things for me. Number one, I think it's, as a citizen, you've got to step forward. You've got to do what you can do to help your community. The second part is, my mom lives in India in a 55+ community. And in the recent past, they had a board that was horrible. And it was really bad. They were passing decrees that were pretty bad. They eventually got voted off last year, but it was a couple of years of really bad stuff going on. And so I saw the negativity of a board that is not good. For me personally, my educational background, I have a bachelor's from Cal State LA and a master's in public administration from National University. My background from a work perspective is my parents owned a pizza parlor, so I was involved in that business for many, many years. And then I got into law enforcement, ended up at the LA County Sheriff's Department. I rose to the rank of lieutenant. During my tenure as a lieutenant on the department, I served at 3 different times as the operations lieutenant at 1 large patrol station and 2 county-wide bureaus where the operations lieutenant runs the day-to-day business of the organization, while the captain's out doing all the political stuff that the leaders do. I also, while on the department, was chosen the sheriff at the time, started up several subcommittees to look at processes. I was the chair of the fiscal subcommittee, where we looked at the processes for finance throughout the department. So that's my background. And I think that answered hopefully all the stuff that you had a question about me.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for your service to the community.
At this time, we're going to move on to the questions that have been filled out. Mary's going to be our moderator, and once again, I will be timing. Each one of you will have 1.5 minutes to answer each of the questions. Do you want to mix it up? I'll just start.
We'll just go ahead and start from the left and then we'll- just like what we did the opening statements.
Okay,
Each one of you will have a minute and a half to answer each question. We're gonna start with Mike. First question. This is a great one. What do you plan to do about the gates? Mike. What do you plan to do about the gates?
Well, the gate issue, like every other major issue, is one in which those of us who have not served on the board and are yet to serve on the board do not yet have all the facts. We're going to have to assemble those facts, and we're going to have to assemble that information when we get on the board. We will suddenly be told or informed as to what has been going on with the gates. I'm all in favor of solving the gate problem, don't get me wrong. I just want to be better informed as to what we've done in the past, what's not working, what could work, and explore all options.
Thank you, Mike.
Can I say ditto? Okay. I know, I don't think I was at the last board meeting, I can't even remember, but maybe it was. They were talking about the fact that they were looking at new folks to look, I can't think of the maintenance agreement that they had, I think it was with Pace. And Pace, would they go out and work a few days and not work anymore? I don't think we're the only HOA with gates that has issues. I did see something recently about Sycamore Creek and them having gate issues. So I think its use is one of it. I think it's the repair plans we have in place because I do believe that the board has said that Livestream, I think that's their name, I might be saying it wrong, but the company that manufactures the gate is the best you can get. So is it that our maintenance plan is so bad, now it has been so bad, and they've evaluated it. Now, do we get to do it sooner? I don't know, because as Michael said, I don't know all the facts on it. But yeah, we do need to fix it. Thank you.
Well, number one, I had no idea the gate was going to be an issue tonight. But yeah, I mean, I think I sort of agree with what Dave says before. I mean, we don't have all the facts that the current board had when they made the decision to go with it. I think they got a new vendor, right?
Not yet.
Not yet, okay, but they're considering that. So whatever the issue is, clearly needs to be figured out and fixed, whatever that is. I mean, I think it's got to be at the top of the list. Everybody's frustrated. I go in and out the gates all the time, and it's not good. Most of the time, well, I say most of the time, but a lot of the time the gates aren't even closed. They're always open. So clearly that's got to be a priority that we need to get fixed one way or the other.
I don't want to repeat what everybody else has said, but I think the other thing is that once the board has decided on what the solution is that we need to make sure that the entire community understands what that solution is, why that solution was chosen, and the progress towards implementing that for every single one of the gates, and what we hope the outcome will be.
Yeah, what they said, no, I'm just kidding. For me, I don't have personal knowledge, I can tell you that I know that the board has probably been working on this pretty hard. There's contractual stuff that's gonna get in the way of fixing it, and it's just a money issue. Because everything's a money issue. The only perspective I have is I know that at the HOAs, at the other communities that I've been in, they don't have the gates that go like ours do. Most of them have the gates that go up and down. And I think a lot of those are not as sturdy, but you can replace the arm easier so they're less expensive. So I don't know what the board has done so far. Obviously, I'm sure they've looked at it, but when you've already spent a lot of money on the gates that we have, obviously the first thing would be try to fix them. But if you can't fix them, then it's up to the community and the board to come up with either the money or the contractual stuff to get it fixed.
The next set of questions, I'm going to go ahead and start with Nancy. TGMA just dissolved 5 committees. What committee do you feel are vital to Trilogy? TGMA just dissolved 5 different committees. What committees do you feel are vital to Trilogy?
I believe it was 3 committees. It's the energy task force, it was lifestyles, and it was the, I think it was. Oh,
Energy test.
energy task force, lifestyles, and then there was it's rules and regulations. Because rules and regulations only meets about every, the technology committee, the production club was also. My question would be, why? Why were they dissolved? Is it that they're not viable, that they're not meeting? Is it that there may be issues between the liaison from TGMA and the committee itself? And can that be worked through? Because if people volunteer to do something, and at the time the board felt that they were viable, why aren't they now? And why aren't they asking the people that are on those committees why they feel they should remain? Because we don't do that. We don't do that. We just say that it's over. But, the board does the very best decision they can make based on the facts they receive. But if they ask the players that are on those committees to volunteer, that might be a start.
Thank you, Nancy.
Yeah, I guess I would want to understand a little bit better how they were dissolved. I mean, why did they go away? And what was the input from the current members of those committees? I mean, I think well, obviously that would be an important thing to think, right? So I think before anything is dissolved, we need to get all the facts from all the parties involved with it, and then go from there. But again, I didn't have all the input as far as why they were dissolved in the first place. So, but I think going forward, we need to have input from all parties concerned with those committees.
Thank you. Linda?
Was the question what committees we think are vital?
Are vital. What committees do you think are vital? That means current committees as well.
Current committees. Okay, for me, it would have to be Jane Snyder's committee, the Emergency Preparedness Committee. I think it's vital to the community, not only because of the information that Jane provides, but also because we have we have block captains in every one of our canyons, and those people cannot find out if there's an issue with anybody. They are a good source to communicate to the entire community information, and to me, that's one of the most vital communities that we have here in Trilogy.
Thank you.
My initial would probably echo her to a certain extent. I served on the countywide EOB team from the Sheriff's Department that responded to stuff. And during my career, I had responded to stuff like 2 or 3 riots during the time, several fires. So I think that's important. But I think the larger issue is one that he mentioned earlier, in that, what's your definition of vital? Because, I'm not trying to be facetious, but, if the only time you get out is playing bocce ball or golf, and there's committees that deal with that, and that's really vital to you as a person. If there's several thousand people in this community, their interests are separate, but they overlap. All the committees are important. I don't know if they're all vital, but to me, I think you have to look at the people in the community. What's the vast number that we do? You might have committees that only deal with a sliver, but that's important to those people. So I think the emergency response is vital because that saves lives in an emergency. But I really think as a group, whether you're interested in some of these other committees, you may have no interest in them, but they may be vital or important to those people. So that would be my answer.
Thank you, Paul. Mike?
Again, the 5 committees that were disbanded were rules and regulations, lifestyles, production, facilities, and the energy task force. the Energy Task Force had finished their work and were no longer meeting. As we explained, rules and regs had not met for a while because they're only needed about every 2 years to deal with specific rules and regs. And they can be reformed, instantly with that as an ad hoc group in the future. The production committee had also become inactive, and facilities was on the books but had never been formed. There was never a facilities committee as such. I don't know the story behind lifestyles and what the decision was there, so I won't speak to that. But I will say that according to the Davis-Sterling Act, and we all know we're under that, there are really only two committees that are vital. One is the Architectural Committee, which we call in Trilogy Design Review. And the second one is Code Enforcement, which you can't have design review without having code enforcement. And in Trilogy, your board members, 3 of your board members at one time serve as the Code Enforcement Committee, and they rotate involvement with the code enforcement. But apart from that, there's a vitality and there's an importance in every committee. We have 7 now official committees, not
Mike,
counting.
I'm gonna give you a few more seconds to finish that sentence.
So I would say, if you're going to disband any group, talk to the group first and have an open forum, have conversation about that before you take your action.
Thank you. This next question, I'm gonna go ahead and start with Dennis. Question, how comfortable are you with the technology demands of the HOA?
Well, I think I'm fairly technological savvy. I'm sorry. I think I understand technology fairly well. I mean, I'm not sure what those demands actually are, but I think that, I think I'm good with technology. I don't really understand the question, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm just gonna, computer literate, I would think the same.
Okay, I'm computer literate.
The question was, how comfortable are you with the technology demands of the HOA?
Very,
Technology demands of the HOA.
very comfortable.
All right. Linda?
Yes, I use the TGI website all the time, and as an ambassador, when residents come in and have questions, I'll always refer them to that, and I'll try to help them with that. So I feel very comfortable with the technology as far as I know what it is at this point in time.
Paul?
Yeah, I'm pretty comfortable computer-wise and tech-wise, although I will say my kids are much more tech-savvy, and I have had them over my house to straighten up stuff, but yes, I'm pretty comfortable, computer-wise, phone-wise, all the tech stuff. Pretty comfortable.
Thank you, Paul. Mike?
And those who know me know this is an easy question for me. I am on the technology committee, and I've been intimately involved with the redesign of the website and flowing it out. In fact, if anything, I'm a little too techy, I guess, so no problem with technology.
Thank you, Mike. Nancy?
Well, as you've heard, I have a lot of help. I'm pretty savvy. Am I, a guru? Absolutely not. Can I learn? Absolutely yes. Lots to learn when you have 300 pages of material to go through and things like that. I'm a reader. I'm a researcher. And I think we can always be better at what we do, but I'm okay.
Good answer. Thank you, Nancy. This next one, we're gonna start with Linda. Linda, can you can you explain the difference between the TGMA and TGIS?
Okay, that's an easy one for me since I've served on the TGIS board in various capacities. The TGIS board is one of the few HOAs, we're one of few HOAs that still have the service organization that stands for Trilogy Glen Ivy Service Organization. It's funded by the 0.5% when you bought your home that you had to pay at the sales price. It's the only funding that TGIS gets from you. And they have 5 areas that they're responsible for. There is some overlap between TGIS and TGMA, particularly when it comes to paying for things. The TGMA board is governed by the Davis Sterling Act, TGIS is not. And TGMA, as you all know, gets their money from the monthly HOA dues that you pay. They have a fiscal responsibility for this community, which TGIS does have a budget that they adhere to, but they have no fiscal responsibility to the entire community, only to use the funds that they do receive to the benefit of the most people within the organization, the community.
Oh, same question.
Nothing as detailed as her, so I've learned stuff listening to her. So I know the bare minimum from being here for a few months. And so I don't think I can express it a tenth as good as she just did.
Thank you both. Mike?
Well, having worked in hospital fundraising, I generally had a hospital foundation, which I was the executive director of in those hospitals. And then we also had a hospital governing board. So that's the exact mirror image of what we have in TGIS and TGMA. It's not called that, but TGIS is sort of like our foundation. They are trustees for a specific amount of money to help develop and enhance the community. TGMA board is the governing board and has responsibility for enforcing our CCNRs.
Thank you, Mike.
Well, since I'm currently on the TGIS board, and I also work with Linda on it, I want to know if Todd asked this question. He's here. Only because, we're working on some questions to ask owners. And my concern was that even in my own small group of friends, they asked me the other day what the difference was, and they've been here a long time. So basically, there are 11 HOAs in the state that act as a TGIS, in effect. And when let's just say that you go to a concert, and the concert costs you 20, we subsidize it by another 20. That's what TGIS does. There's an amount of money that's allocated both for lifestyles and blue water. We do funding for emergency preparedness. Recently, some of you may have gone to CPR class, and that class that you paid for, we actually subsidized a portion of them. So it's to offset things, and it's sad that the state made the decision not to continue with this type of HOA, because in the long run, I know at the time you buy a house, you're thinking, what the heck, what's this 0.5% that I have to pay to some fund? But it's really to the benefit of owners in a lot of different ways.
Thank you, Nancy. Dennis?
So by the time it gets to the 5th person on the same question, it's kind of, what they said. But I will say too, I think somebody explained it to me once that a main difference is that TGMA is responsible for, I think I have this right, all the current assets that are within Trilogy. TGIS, I think, is the vehicle that says if they want to add an asset, it kind of runs through that organization. So you look at new versus existing, I think that's how it was explained to me at one point. So I'm going to go with that.
Good answer. All right, this one we're going to start with Paul. What actions will you commit to ensure full vendor contract bidding is followed? What actions will you commit to ensure full vendor contract bidding is followed?
I think that comes down to the relationship the board has with the people that are in charge of getting the contracts and ensuring that they're done correctly. I think as a board member, you're in an oversight position and you're also in a decision-making position. So it's a dual thing. What will I commit to? I think just by sitting up here, and I can't speak for the other candidates, but I bet you I can. We're all up here for a reason. We believe that we can do justice to the position and to this community, and that we're putting ourselves out there to represent the community. And I think it's important for us as individuals to do that. So I would commit 100%. I don't know what else I would want to say.
Thank you, Paul. Mike?
While I don't know the specific number of vendors we have, I know it's in the dozens. And I would simply recommend or ask if we have a policy of reviewing the vendors on some kind of a scheduled basis. Say every 2 years or every 3 years, every vendor gets evaluated. And certainly they get evaluated when they're asking for a renewal of a contract. And that could be every year. I don't know what the schedule of that is, and I'd have to be on the board to be privy to that, because contract negotiation is a part of one of the responsibilities where the board can meet in executive session and not in open session. But I would say regular evaluation of the vendors, and are they performing according to contract, and are we getting what we pay for?
Thank you, Mike. Nancy?
It puzzles me why someone's asking this question. So is it that there's a concern that we haven't been fair in how contracts have been awarded? It was my understanding that there has to be at least 3 bids on something we're going to have done. Now, I don't know if that's correct. I thought it had to be 3. The board may okay a vendor, perhaps, but they have First Service Residential carries a lot of responsibility and things that they have to look at. And I don't know if this comes under the facilities manager in regards to what they're doing. But this tells me that perhaps we need to review what is done today, because I don't know. And we need to look at, are we doing it properly in regards to our due diligence and following through on the contracts that are being awarded, and look at that. But it's something that we need to look into.
Thank you, Nancy. Dennis?
Could you repeat the question again, please?
What actions will you commit to ensure full vendor contract bidding is followed?
Yeah, so not having been on the board, I'm not sure what's in place right now, but I do think that's an important thing to review and to analyze what's in place right now. Make sure that we're doing that. If there's anything that needs to be added to that to ensure that the outcome is better, then I think we need to look at that for sure. As far as existing contractors or vendors, I mean, I think, again, I'm not sure what's in the rules and regs right now, but I would think that we would have some sort of a review process. I don't know what the timing is, 6 months, 12 months, or as you go, but I'd have to see what's in there right now.
Thank you, Dennis. Linda?
Okay, I don't know that I have that much to add, although I do know when I've gone to the TGMA meetings and when they're talking about working on things, that Dan, who is our facilities manager, always presents all the different bids. And I've also found that of late, he's also said if we had a vendor who might have the lowest bid, the experience we've had with that vendor in the past, and did they perform to what we believed contractually they were obligated to do. And if they haven't, then they might go with a vendor who maybe is a bit pricier, but has been more reliable in responding to Dan's calls and questions. So I do think that TGMA is doing that now, as far as I know. As Nancy said, I would be interested in what the concern is from the community that prompted this question.
Thank you, Linda. The next question, we're going to start with Mike. How do you propose to increase the transparency communications to the residents from the TGMA board?
Well, those are two elements that are in my platform, so to speak. So I think in the communications area, we just need to have more avenues for communication and not overly rely on e-blasts and email. We don't eliminate e-blasts and email, but we need to have other forms of communication that extend beyond that. And yes, that does include social media. First Service Residential actually has a communications plan. We just got to read it, and we've got to follow it. There's a lot of information in their plan or any other management company as to how you manage communications for an HOA. And I think the board needs to study that with the help of staff and determine what we can and we can't do, or what we can do later, or what we can do now to improve communications. I think the turnout tonight is excellent. I mean, you're here and you're giving feedback. So I think the feedback tools need to be enhanced, and more tools need to be used to get feedback from the community. And those two things together equal transparency. You're learning about things not at the last minute, but you're learning about things as they are in the planning stage. Just endeavor to do that earlier rather than later and eliminate the surprises.
Thank you, Mike. Nancy?
I think transparency has become a buzzword. It was like carpal tunnel syndrome, 20 years ago, in regards to what's transparent, what isn't. I think timeliness of communicating changes. Timeliness in things that happen. I think e-blasts do work. I think there's a problem, though, that not everyone's email is in our system, and they go up and try and change it. And I'm not quite sure if there's a breakdown in when they put their email in, especially our new people. We've got a lot of new folks that have moved in. And you've certainly seen them, I know Linda and I see them as ambassadors when they're getting their talk through in regards to how things work and things like that. But for instance, I'll give you a for instance. On February 16th, we had a financial review that everyone here was invited to. I don't remember how many people were here, but maybe 10. And it was to go over the finances for the next fiscal year. Part of that had to do with the fact that our HOA was going to increase $16. My thought was that night or the very next day, there should have been an e-blast, a communication coming from the board that your fee was going to increase. And what happened is people started saying, well, I think it's going to increase to $500. I think there's going to be a special assessment. And it was kind of like that can and string again. I think timeliness of information is key. I think we should explore whatever avenue we can. And maybe we have a communication committee, I think. And
Nancy, we'll give you a couple more seconds to finish.
Gene Snyder is in charge of it, but we need to figure out what would cause you to read things more and become more informed. We need to know that.
Thank you, Nancy. Dennis?
Yeah, for me, I think that the way that you all want to have communication delivered to you is to hear from you. I think we need to find out what are the best ways to communicate to the people that live in Trilogy. We can guess all the time and say social media, but there's people who don't do social media. There's people who don't have email. There's people who don't have computers. So I think we have to figure out a way to communicate with everybody based on input from everybody, if we can do it that way.
Thank you, Nancy. Linda?
Yes, I agree that we need to find better ways to communicate, and I don't think that there's a lack of transparency. I think there's just a lack of the information being given out in a format that enough people in Trilogy see and understand, so that they do not feel that the board is doing things behind their back. And if that's informal meetings, if it's, I know the TGIS board at one time considered putting a sign out by the mailroom, one of those electronic signs, to tell you what was going on in the community, because we do know that a number of people they don't like emails and they don't read them, and some of them don't have the ability to get them at home. And not everybody reads the Trilogy Times, so we have to find a way, whatever it is.
Thank you, Linda. Paul?
I also agree. I think it's a matter of perspective. My wife and I think the board has been very communicative. However, we pay attention to Facebook and all the emails that come out. But like my mom, she does not on email. She has a phone, but she really can't use it. So when we're there, basically, she has to see something posted somewhere if she wants to understand what's going on. So I think it's a matter, I'm sure the board is trying to get everything out. There is an awful lot of information at a community this size in the various components. But I agree with the rest of the candidates here that I think we need to explore non-technology related ways to get the message out.
Thank you, Paul. The next question, we'll start with Nancy. Prior to raising dues, what would you consider doing?
A tap dance, no. Prior to raising, the board doesn't take raising dues very easy. It's not something that's in their heart to really want to do. But they also have a fiduciary responsibility to all of you to maintain this environment that you live in, this community, all the community areas. And in reality, and you're not going to want to hear this, but we really should be raising dues 1 to 4% every year. We didn't for 3 years. So yeah, you had a 5% increase. And it wasn't just us. If you look out at other HOAs, and if you have any friends in other HOAs, say Terramore. We actually have some friends who moved to Terramore, and now they wish they could move back. And that's what they're thinking. But their dues were $336. I can't quite remember. Now they're going to be, they started April 1st, now they're $420. So HOAs have to do what they have to do. And it's not an easy decision. They go through a lot of data, a lot of results to make the decision that it's the right thing to do, even though they know they're an owner too. They're going to have an increase. And it's not an easy process to go through. So what would I do before? I'm not sure, but I'm sure I can learn.
Thank you, Nancy. Dennis?
Yeah, I think one of the things we all agreed upon is to keep Trilogy as is, a kind of pristine community. And the TGMA, the G stands, or the M stands for maintenance, right? So to keep it this way, there's a good number of projects that need to roll under the maintenance part. And to do that, rates for everything is going up across the board. I don't know, inflation is very high, cost of everything is up, labor's up. So to get an increase on their dues to maintain the level that we have right now in Trilogy, I think holding it to 16 probably wasn't too bad considering some of the other HOAs.
Thank you, Dennis. Linda?
Well, I want to put it in perspective about how old our community is. Our community is 21, almost 22 years old. And I don't know about you, but I look at myself, and 22 years ago, I wasn't spending as much to maintain this as I am now. So that's actually what I told somebody when they were making a comment about our dues going up. And it's this, is if we don't maintain our community, the value of our homes is going to go down. We're not going to attract people to this community. And we do have a competition for 55 plus communities. So we have an obligation to keep this community as wonderful as it is right now, and that it takes money. If we want to look at taking away things, then that causes all other problems. And I know that most of the people who live here are on a fixed budget, so it does impact them. But you have to make a choice, whether you want to lose some of the things that we have, or if you want your dues to go up.
Thank you, Linda. Paul?
This is a really tough situation. When you live right now with 8% every year going up in the cost of everything, you either have to cut stuff or you have to raise prices. So, in my mind, the board really has three really important functions. They gotta be ready to respond to emergency stuff that happens. They have to prepare ongoing maintenance stuff that has to be done. And then you have to plan for significant long-term renewal improvements that you have to. There are certain things you can put off, and maybe that's what we have to do as a board, is put off stuff. But if you put stuff off, sooner or later you're gonna pay for it. I moved my mom out of Downey, her house in Downey, to where she is now, because over several years, her paycheck to paycheck went down to the point where she couldn't afford to live where she was. And we had to sell her house in Downey and move her into a retirement community that was actually cheaper by the house. And I feel for the 21 people that have been here for 20 years that are getting up in age, who are on a fixed income, and that raise in HOA fees means that they can't do stuff or can't buy stuff that they could before. So I think that is very important to keep in mind. But on the other hand, I think she said it very well. What type of community do you want to live in, and what are you going to take away? So those are the decisions the board has to make.
Thank you, Paul. Mike?
Well, as George said, we are a nonprofit enterprise, a nonprofit business, and that doesn't mean, we don't always understand the profit part of that. We think we're not supposed to make a profit, but every nonprofit business has to spend less than they receive, or spend the exact same amount every year. And how difficult is that? So I'm saying, with regard to budgets, yes, the first thing you would do when you're facing a potential increase is say, where can we trim expenses? Is there any area where we can trim expenses before you evaluate the dues increase? Also, with this organization, with this nonprofit, one of the things we could do is maybe enhance some revenues outside of dues. And there could be a discussion about that, or an evaluation about that. There are ways in which nonprofits can raise additional funds. I will exceed my minute and a half to go into the ideas, but after all, I was a fundraiser for 40 years. So the first thing that always happened when these hospitals lacked money, they knocked on my door, or the foundation. Now, I'm not expecting that to happen here, but the fact of the matter is there are other revenue sources we might consider in the future that aren't that difficult to uncover.
Thank you, Mike. Next question, we're going to start with Dennis. Are you willing to work 20 hours a week or more if needed?
Yes. Yes, because I've talked to a few board members, and that's what they say is going to happen. So I was fully informed about that before I decided to run, and committed to do that. I think it's an important post. I think it's an important community to sacrifice time for. So yes.
Thank you, Dennis. Linda?
Yes, that question has been asked of me many, many times by people that I know on the board. And the answer is, I know what I'm getting myself into, and yes, I'm willing to do it.
Thank you, Linda. Paul?
How can I say no? I think the time that you have to put in is the time that you have to put in once you commit. And I think that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Paul. Mike?
Yes.
Nancy?
Let's see. I think I do that now, yes.
Thank you. I started with Dennis, right? Did I start with you? Okay, Linda. What can we do, or what could be done to make the TGMA meetings more interesting. Linda?
What can we do to make the TGMA meetings more interesting? Well, they're usually pretty interesting when people are ticked off about something, but not in a way that the board always appreciates. I think they're more interesting now than they used to be. We've gotten really good at presenting the financials so that the pain is reduced to the audience, but it is a requirement that the financials are presented there. I don't know, maybe there could be a topic that people come up with ahead of time and say, we'd like for you to talk about this at the meeting. Whatever is a hot topic, and we can talk about it without people coming up and complaining about it. The board could have an opportunity to present their views on this subject. I don't know, entertaining is a bit difficult with the teaching.
Thank you, Linda. Paul?
I have a good answer, maybe hire a comedian, I don't know. We're usually dealing with dry facts, and those are hard to make exciting, but I think how you display and how you explain things is part of the interesting or boring part of the whole. You explain something, so I guess you'd have to think of alternatives, how we're going to get the information out to make it more interesting.
Thank you, Paul. Mike?
I mentioned one thing in my opening statement about those fireside chats, and I think we don't need to just concentrate on the formal meeting for TGMA, because after all, there are certain prescriptive things that the TGMA board has to follow by policy, by the Davis-Sterling law. There are certain things that we have to cover, and I know a lot of times that's very boring. That's why when we do have a crowd at the board meetings, half the crowd leaves after their topic is discussed and the room becomes virtually empty. But I think the idea of having those fireside chats where you are only allowed to have 2 members in that kind of a session, no more than 2 members. The 3 members can't get together outside of a regular board meeting that's not, agendized, and otherwise they're guilty of the offense of the Brown Act. So I think, though, having those kinds of meetings where there's a Q&A opportunity like we're having tonight, with maybe not every month, but maybe once a quarter or a couple of times a year, some way doing that kind of a session may make it more interesting.
Thank you, Mike.
Have 50-50 raffles. And not do it until the meeting's over. I think that we need to look at revamping how there are certain things that have to be covered. Is there a way to revamp it? Make it more interesting in some ways. The subject matter in a lot of cases is dry. It is, but I know they've tried to move to 3 o'clock. I don't know if 3 o'clock is now what it is every month, because it was, okay. So they've tried to make it earlier so people could attend earlier, but it hasn't really pulled in folks that they wish they could. I think revamping it, I think that the fireside chat that Mike was talking about, it was like, come meet the board. And there were like 2 board members, and you could talk to them. Maybe a town hall once a quarter where people can all get together and bring concerns or whatever that looks like. Another thing might be that every canyon has a key contact that's established that people in that canyon can go to when they're having issues. And then somehow facilitate that going back to the board in a way where the board becomes more informed as to what's going on in the various canyons within Trilogy. Because sometimes when you aren't informed, decisions are made that aren't completely vetted out. You don't have all the answers sometimes. But anyway, yes, we need to do something. If you guys have ideas, share them.
Thank you, Linda. Nancy. I'm sorry, Nancy. Dennis.
Well, I think we should have a wine tasting event. But seriously, I mean, they have to cover some things that aren't all that exciting sometimes, but, I think rather than us trying to guess what, might be interesting, I think we should just find out from all of you what you'd like to see incorporated into the board meetings. I think we should work it that way. Instead of us telling you what should be interesting, you tell us what would be interesting, and maybe there's a segment of time we could implement something like that.
Thank you, Dennis. I started with you, Linda, right?
Yeah, you did.
Thank you, so I'm gonna start with you now. How would you handle stress in this new position?
Is my wife better to answer that question? I think that would be better. Stress is self-induced. Obviously, in law enforcement, I was faced with a lot of stressful stuff. I have sat in front of people that were upset with me or upset at other things and playing it off to me because they're angry. Anger is a usual emotion, and I don't think you can internalize it. And I think you really have to use humor and logic and sometimes silence, let the people vent, and just let it go. Because you cannot, if someone is in the midst of anger or depression or sadness or whatever the expression or emotion they're feeling, and you're getting the brunt of it, sometimes you can respond, and sometimes you just have to sit there, let them get it out of their system, and you really can't answer them or help them. So how I handle stress is either in those manners. Either you try humor if it works, you try silence if it doesn't, and sometimes you just have to take it.
Thank you, Karen. Mike?
I think the best way to handle that as a group is for us to realize that this halftime job is not about us. It's not about me. And therefore, it's not me who's responsible for this. All the board members are collectively responsible for what we do. And the staff. Remember, we need to rely upon the staff, and they need to rely upon us. It's a mutual benefit operation. So we share those responsibilities, we share those roles, if you will, but there's a distinct difference. Staff is here to manage the affairs. The board is here to oversee setting policy and direction and the mission, embracing that mission. And so there's no real magic formula, but I'll just remember it's not about me.
Thank you, Mike. Nancy?
I'm very stressed at this question. Stress, everyone handles stress completely different. There's stress when someone dies. There's stress when there's a divorce. I think they say that those are the two highest things in regards to stress people go through. Stress at rates going up. I mean, the gas rate that we all suffered, and who knows, now it's going to be gasoline that's going up again. But I think that each person handles it different. If this is to ask me how I handle stress, it's probably by eating a bunch of junk food and watching Korean TV and subtitles. Somehow I cook too. But I think it's just a lot of self-talk. I did a lot of counseling before in a lot of different kind of jobs that I've had, and it's talking to yourself out of where you may be. And there certainly are folks here that live in Trilogy that are going through some really hard times in different ways. And I think we see them a lot at the front desk that, we try and help them and work through issues with them, but we're not paid counselors and things like that. But there are stress tabs you can get at, not Sam's, but at the other one. And believe me, they work. In 30 minutes, you're just calm.
Thank you, Nancy. Dennis?
Well, I think that for me, stress is something that you kind of create on yourself sometimes. But the way I look at the position on the TGMA board is that it's a team, really. It's not just one person that has to take on the whole load. So I think that if the board members can work as a team, along with TGIS, and with you guys, the management team. I mean, I think the stress is lower if we can spread it across those 3 teams. So
Thank you, Dennis. Linda?
Okay, I'm confused. I don't know if they talked about stress that you have or stress that you want to give me. So I'm going to answer both questions. If you are stressed, my first response is going to be to listen and try to withhold giving you advice, because sometimes people only want to vent. And they don't agree, and they're not going to hear anything you tell them, and they don't really want you to tell them. They just want to get that out, and then they feel better. For me, if I'm stressed, I try to do everything I can to resolve whatever is stressing me. And then I tell myself, okay, you've done everything you can, you have to let it go. And then I go home to my dog and vent.
Thank you, Linda. Next question, we're going to start with Mike. How do you feel about the Sunshine Clubs for each canyon and their contribution to the community?
Well, I support the Sunshine Clubs. I'm glad we have them. I know that some of the canyons are more active with their Sunshine Clubs than others, but that can be expected. Maybe we can provide some mentoring for Sunshine Clubs if they're having some difficulty of some kind or finding people. Maybe there's one club that can come over and help the members of another club. After all, I mean, the canyons are really what is Trilogy. And each of the canyons are sort of, I hear from time to time that, well, we've got the best canyon, and we've got the best canyon, so that kind of rivalry or that kind of bragging about your canyon is a good thing. And so I just say, whatever we can do, if the canyons reach out to the board, or either board for that matter, and they want help with something, we should be willing to provide it.
Thank you, Mike. Nancy?
I believe the question was, what do I think about Sunshine Clubs?
Correct. And their contribution to the
I
community.
think they contribute a lot. I think that they're the backbone of Trilogy. I think that what they do and how they do it and the hard work that all these volunteers put in is amazing. And yeah, we've got some smaller canyons that may not do it as much because they're smaller, but they do their very best. And there's a lot that they do, whether it's a card because you've been ill, it's a welcome to our canyon. All hands on deck is the Sunshine Clubs, as far as I'm concerned, and we're lucky we have them.
yeah, I'd have to concur with what Nancy said. I think they're fantastic. I would support them 100%. They do a lot of really great work. They have a lot of great volunteers. They put in a lot of time and effort. And I think most people that have enjoyed some of the events they put on, some of the things that they do, would support that as well.
Thank you, Dennis. Linda?
Okay. I was privileged when I was on the TGIS board to know all of the Sunshine Club presidents and many of the other Sunshine Club members of all of the canyons. And it really gave me, I had an appreciation for them before, but after the closer association I have with them, I really understood just how much work they do and how much they contribute to everybody's well-being here in our community, and I think they're fantastic.
I've only been here a few months, and we've had probably 2 or 3 contacts, but so far what I've seen, it's one of those things where you almost feel like you're part of small town America, that the community's all friendly, you have people involved everywhere. It's just really great.
Thank you. Next question. I'll start with Nancy. Serving on committees for the HOA may be one of the best ways to prepare for board leadership. On what TGMA committee have you served?
Several. I was on the lifestyle committee recently, actually for a while. I'm chair of the community action committee that looks at what's going on outside of Trilogy, all the development, all the different things that are going on that really everyone in this room needs to pay attention to in regards to all the building that's going to surround us. Specifically the Serrano project, I might add, which is that 486 acre baby that is going next to where the Amazon project was, and the Amazon project went bye-bye, but in its place, they're putting in more warehouses. In fact, you may have seen rocks and a fence go up because they're in the process of being approved by the planning, but they have an EIR, which is an environmental impact, that once that's announced, every one of you should put in your thoughts about the impact it has on the area. And it's just really important. What else was I on? Oh, and I'm an ambassador. And you know what, you guys, it's so rewarding. Sometimes it's painful because everyone here, I think at one time has forgotten their fob. And you're looking there at the door. And that's okay, because that happens to all of us. Anyway, that's what I did.
Thank you. Dennis?
I have not served on a committee.
Thank you.
Okay, I was liaison to the lifestyle committee when I was on the TGIS board. I've been on the wellness committee for a number of years. I'm an ambassador, and I served as a TGIS member. I served on 3 task force committees that were put together to look at different things. One was the upgrade of the kitchen here. One was what to do with the bistro, and the other one was storage.
Thank you.
I have not served on any either yet.
Thank you, Paul. Mike?
Well, I'm currently also an ambassador in the Blue Water Sports Center. Thank you, Mary. And our, of course, club. Edie had to correct me today. Is it a club or a center? Whatever. Club, all right. Then I'm also on the technology committee, the communications committee, and the MyTGI website redevelopment team, which is an ad hoc group. It will not last forever, I hope. And then in the past, I've been on the rules and regulations committee, and also on the ad hoc group that served to secure in 2022, the CCNR changes for Cobblestone Canyon. We all remember that from a year ago. And finally, I've also been a member of the Cobblestone Canyon Disaster Recovery Committee. Unfortunately, we did our job well. We haven't had a disaster.
Thank you, Mike. We'll start this next question with Dennis. Profession before retirement. How will this help you with the HOA board?
So in my previous career, I was a senior development manager for Freeman. Freeman was and still is, general contractor for trade shows across the country and across the world, actually. So I managed sales teams in the past. We had annual budgets of over $40 million that we had to manage. I'm used to managing teams, used to managing money. So yeah, I think there's a lot of in-line sort of comparisons to the TGMA board and some of the things that I did in my past career.
Thank you. Linda?
In the last 20 years, as I said before, I was a program manager. So what I had a team, none of whom reported to me, and we had a goal that we had to work toward. We had a budget and we had a timeline. So I think I know how to manage money very well, and I also believe that my skills in managing a project and the timeline and looking at what needed to be done and following up on that would be, serve me very well working on the TGMA board.
Thank you. Oh,
Basically, mentioned before, but most of my adult life, I was involved in management or the administration or the research aspects of policy and procedures and supervising people. So I think all of those things will help on the board.
thank you. Mike?
As I mentioned before, I was a non-profit hospital development officer, which is a fancy title for the fundraiser at the hospitals. I was responsible for recruiting donors and volunteers to assist those efforts. The 3 locations in Southern California where I last worked in that 40-year career are probably germane. I came here from Foothill Presbyterian Hospital in Glendora while we lived in Rancho Cucamonga. I left that job a little bit early because I discovered cancer one morning as I was getting ready to go to work, and went through 16 months of chemotherapy and various forms of cancer care, a stem cell transplant. So I tell people in the hospital field, I really didn't understand hospitals until I became a serious patient. And I probably don't understand HOAs until I become a board member. So that is my life. But the other 2 places where I worked was Methodist Hospital in Arcadia, which is now USC Arcadia Hospital, and also was at Riverside Community right here in the Inland Empire.
Thank you, Mike. Nancy?
Do you know how hard it is to talk about yourself? Really. My husband and I owned, we had a pizza restaurant, so I can kind of connect with you. We have owned 2 bakeries. We co-owned an Italian market. I worked 43 years for a communication company, kind of at the same time. I was both non-salaried and management. I was management, I think, 25 years. I had centers of service representatives that reported to me. I handled Orange County and San Diego, and then I went into a different job and handled all the state of California and Nevada when it came to employees, both management and non-management. And at that time, the group I supported had 25,000 employees. So I basically did human resources support up to an HRG and handled contractual with the union, writing contracts, rolling those contracts out to the union presidents, and talk about a formidable audience of 500 people down at 1010 Wilshire, looking at you and rolling out a surplus plan that they didn't really like. So have I been in very difficult situations? Absolutely. I've fired people, and that's district level and below, and made recommendations when I was hired. I've had to tell people that someone died. If there's difficult situations, you deal with them the very best you can. And I think Linda said something back a while ago about listening. And
Just a few more seconds to finish that sentence.
I understand business. We ran businesses. I managed a lot of different things that dealt with people.
Thank you, Nancy. Dennis? Did you mention? Oh, I'm so sorry. We did start with you. All right. We'll start with last 2 questions. Linda, how do you feel about our activities closing up at 9 p.m. and not open longer? I'm going to assume this is for TGMA activities. Closing at 9 p.m. and not lasting for longer, open longer.
My understanding is that clubs can have activities that stay open until 10. So it's the lifestyles events that stop at 9 o'clock or some I guess that's what their question is.
It's not specific, it just says, how do you feel about our activities closing up at 9 PM?
So I don't really know how to answer that because as far as I know, they can, if it's a club event, it can go on until 10 o'clock.
I believe it's even midnight, so.
As far as I'm concerned, we should all party all night, so. I don't know, we can get into these things and find out there are rules, like she implied, that we don't really think about. If there are rules in place, then that should be communicated. If there are no rules, then I see nothing wrong, as long as there's adequate security and that the safety of everybody is considered.
Thank you, Paul. Mike?
Ditto to that, yes. I think if there's a special situation where somebody needs to be here later, well, then they negotiate that, or they ask about that, and that should be considered. I suppose the compelling thing to answer is, what about the staff cost of having somebody here in the late hours? Or does it matter? Or is the event going to pick up that cost? I mean, essentially, we all pick up that cost because we're paying for the dues and so forth. But I guess you'd have to treat it on an individual basis. There are probably times when staying later makes sense. For instance, a New Year's Eve party. But at other times, maybe, that 9 PM closing time is probably because we're losing staff at 9 PM.
Thank you, Mike. Nancy?
I think you lose the 10, but.
Oh.
Well, thank you very much. Okay. It's puzzling in regards to the question because I don't think we really understand it. If they're talking about lifestyle events, yeah, they probably are ending around 9, and if you think they should go on longer, you need to provide feedback. And I think you're going to have a chance in various ways to provide feedback about the events, the hours. I personally have this time. I'll talk loud. I got tired of hearing this. Okay. I wore it out. I think that we really need to look at the hours today that we require people to be here at 10. Because how busy, I'm not an event night, I'm not talking about an event or anything for clubs, but do we really need to keep someone here until 10 o'clock when no one's here? Why don't we cut back, maybe make it 9 o'clock? I know the employees would like that. And I think that that's something that has to be looked at in regards to parties. If you feel that they're not long enough or you want them longer, provide feedback, because unless you do that, no one knows, if that's what the question was.
Thank you, Nancy. Dennis?
Yeah, if there are rules I don't know if there are rules, but if there isn't a rule about how they can stay, and if the costs aren't associated with how they can stay, I think we just need to get feedback from everybody and say, how late do we want to stay at these events, right? And once we get feedback, everybody wants to stay till 10, and there's no negative cost associated with that, I think we should go for it.
Thank you. Last question. We'll start with Paul. Do you believe FSR manages Trilogy, and you have a choice, 1, 2, or 3? 1, not well enough. 2, more than enough. 3, just right.
What was the first part of that?
Do you believe FSR manages Trilogy, 1, 2, or 3? Not well enough, more than enough, or just right? It's like the Goldilocks and the there.
Me personally, I've been very pleased by the board, and it seems like the community is well run. A lot of activities. I'm not sure you could ever do too much for the variety of people we have here, so I don't know if too well could ever be done, because you're always striving for more. But yeah, I've been pretty pleased by what I've seen in the community.
Thank you. Mike?
Well, I think as a board member, I'm sure we will, when we become board members, we will get a lot more education about FSR and all of the staff people. I will say, as a community citizen for 12 years, I've been treated very well by the people who work for FSR, and we've had regenerations of people, multiple generations of people, but people in the past and the current staff, they personally have been courteous to me, they've been helpful to me, and I know at times I've been pretty demanding, right, James?
One of my favorites.
Yeah, I've expected a lot of feedback at different times, and I personally have no complaints, but I think ultimately it's the responsibility of the board to survey the community on that issue. Everybody, we need to hear from the community about how things are going, and not in a judgmental way, but in an attitude of trying to help everybody rise to a higher level and be doing better.
Thank you, Mike. Nancy?
I think there should be a fourth part of that question. It was doing great, or not doing great. What was the second one?
More than enough or just right?
I think there are always areas to improve. And I think that the turnover here has really hurt the community. It's hurt FSR. It's been hard times for everybody because everyone's relearning, and the rules sometimes change and they change and they change, and it's confusing to everyone. So yes, I think they're doing their best, but I think it can be better. That would be my response.
Thank you, Nancy. Dennis?
I mean, for me personally, I don't have any complaints, so to speak, but I think it's really not about whether we, the board members or future board members, think you're doing a great job. It's really what everybody else thinks. And I think we need to set up some sort of a communication or forum or whatever to really get feedback from all the residents about how FRS is doing.
Thank you. Linda?
As the others have said, I personally have a great relationship with the FSR staff, but I know from talking to residents who come up to the desk when I'm an ambassador that that's not every resident feels that way. And I do think, as Nancy said, there's always room for improvement. I don't think that there's a major issue, but certainly I think the issue that I hear the most has to do with communication and getting back to people when they don't feel that their problem has been addressed. And I think if I were to be on the board, that was something that I think the board needs to work on and FSR could improve on as well.
Thank you, Linda. That was it for all the questions. We'll go ahead and do our closing statements. This time, instead of starting with Mike, we're gonna go ahead and start with you, Paul, and then we'll work our way down. Closing statement. You have 2 minutes.
I won't be that long. Thank you very much for listening to me. You can ask my wife, I'm not the most patient man all the time, but some of the time I am. I believe serving on the board is an important function and is really important and is not to be taken lightly. So all I can say is I will take this job as serious as anything else that I've ever done in my life because I feel my mom is in a situation similar to this, and there are people in this community that probably are not being able to get out and do as much as they would like, and they really are depending on the board to be an underlying support factor for them. And then for all of us that are active, I think that the board is here to make sure that this community is here for another 100 years. And as my competitor here mentioned earlier, it's really important to have all the activities and all the facilities and everything done correctly so that the people that move into my house when I move in 100 years enjoy it also. Thank you very much.
Linda.
In closing, I've always wanted to be involved in this community since I moved here. So I've always looked for different ways to use the skill set and the interest that I have to serve the community. I walk my dog a lot, and walking in my neighborhood, for some reason, I don't know whether it's my face, my dog, or whatever, that everybody will come up to me and tell me the issue that they're having in their neighborhood. So I think one of the reasons that I chose to serve on the TGIS board and why I'm now looking to serve on the TGMA board is I believe in doing something about issues. And when people bring me a problem, I try to help them. And that's why I choose to be a candidate for the TGMA board. Thank you.
Dennis.
For me, I think being a resident of the Trilogy, it's very important to maintain what we have and to grow from here. So I'm willing to do the hours that everybody talks about. I'm committed to do that. I know I think it's a 2-year, and you can go past that. He's been on the board for like 12 years now. So, but yeah, so I'm committed to that. I'm very excited about that. My wife's committed to stand behind me and support that as well. So I think, so I'm ready to go.
Thank you.
I believe in volunteerism. I believe you owe it to where you live to do your very best in whatever that looks like. Whether it's joining a club rather than being in charge of one, joining a committee, whatever that takes to be part of, they talk about villages. We really are in our own way. We are a village. Do I think that I would be an addition to the board? Yeah, I do. Some here may not. I personally do. I think I would. Am I truthful? Do I consider facts? Do I weigh everything? Absolutely. Am I thoughtful? Yeah. My background certainly has led me in different directions, whether it's customer service, whether it's people, whether it's union relations, whether it's firing someone which you don't really want to do, but you have to do it. Yeah, I've had to make difficult decisions, and that goes 43 years of work that I was involved in, plus having a bakery and having lots of responsibility of employees that work for you. So I think anyone on this committee right here in front of you would be a good choice. You just need to choose 3. Thank you.
I'm going to mix this up a little bit because I don't want to be redundant with other things that have said, and Dee Dee's going to chide me about this when we get home because she did a lot of practicing with me and what I was going to say at this time. I want to close by giving recognition and having all of you give applause to George Cole, to Joan Davis, and to Dennis Helton, who are board members leading their positions. George talked about the 7 years, but George, you realize that 7 years is the complete number. That's why we have 7 days in the week, and that's why the Bible refers to 7 so often. And so, consider things complete for those 7 years. But yes, all the current board members and those who are now leaving and those who will be coming on our due our appreciation. And I would say, I guess I got to know this experience best by being a volunteer, not for the entire 11 years we've been here, but for many of those years we volunteered for various activities. And I encourage all of you to find, if you're not now volunteering in some activity or some engagement, find one that you like and begin doing it. And who knows, you may run for the board someday, maybe not. Thank you very much.
So I wanted to just thank all of you for dedicating your time and being willing to serve the community. So everybody, thank you to each one of you. I wanted to thank each one of you for coming out, especially for the management team. I love to see you guys. I love to see you guys come out and be involved. So the more that I get to see you, the happier it makes me. We do have the ballot mailer that will be going out as of Friday, so expect to see that in the mail. That is where you will have the chance to vote for your next Board of Directors member. Because of our late cancellation from Janice, unfortunately, the ballot mailer will have one extra candidate on there. Please know that if you do choose and mark the ballot for Janice, that vote will not be counted. She's chosen not to run. We would encourage you guys. I love that you guys are here. Talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors. Encourage them to vote. We do have a minimum requirement to be able to go through with the election. So the more involvement we have, the better chance we have for getting the right people on the board. So vote, 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 and encourage everybody else that's out there to vote. Our annual meeting will be May 23rd. We will convene at 10 o'clock in the morning. At that time, that will be the final day that you can't turn in a ballot. At that time, you can bring it in and drop it off in person if you haven't had a chance to mail it in or get it in yet. We will dismiss the meeting, have our ballot count, and then we'll reconvene in the afternoon to make the announcement of the winners. And then they will decide which positions they'll be holding. So once again, I can't encourage you guys enough to please reach out to everyone you know, encourage them to vote and be a part of things. I would love to see our meetings on a monthly basis look like this. I'd love to see all of you. I encourage you guys to come out to meetings if you can. Be as involved as you can, and thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Now,